Hey guys, I'm back here in the grow room. I was down here a couple of hours ago, actually, right after work, and I did a short video talking about how, people like you and I who have jobs and families can do such a time-consuming hobby as gardening, kind of on a larger scale, and how we just kind of have to sneak in the time, and maybe we don't do everything the right exact way. Well, right after that video, I got super sleepy and I had to go take a little cat nap. It's kind of how it goes these days. And now I've fed Molly and I put her to bed, and now it's, 8:15 and I'm back here in the grow room a little bit refreshed and ready to plant some seeds because it has to be done today, in my opinion. So let's walk through my method of starting seeds. This is really my first planting of my kind of high stakes type of a crop because, before right now I was just playing around with the seeds. I had to grow something, so I was throwing some things in. And today I'm planting peppers. And peppers take a long time to grow, and that's why I'm starting them so early. And they are, one of the things that I have to have, especially for, just our bell peppers, because we make a lot of salsa. And if I mess it up, but then I'm kind of doomed. It's hard to start over after you've killed some of your seedlings, if that indeed happens. And it does happen to me in particular. I usually lose a round of seedlings at least. So you'll see me sort of reserving some of my seeds too for a second round just in case something happens with the first. But so I'm going to plant some seeds, and you'll notice that I don't take every precaution. I don't do every step. I've tried a lot of them and I frankly haven't noticed a difference. But really, I do the things that I think are important, and I switch things up too. So I'm trying some new things this year, and you'll see me do things that maybe seem lazy or careless. But in my opinion, I've started and grown seeds in a lot of different ways, and they haven't all been perfect, and I haven't taken all the steps, and they've still been successful. And so a lot of the things that you see, tips and tricks, are great, but they're not always necessary. So we're going to get started on planting some peppers. One thing you'll notice when you get seeds is the seed packets are really different. Like, this is a seed packet from Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds. It tells you a little bit about it. It tells you how to seed start and, some details about how it grows. And then these from Seeds and Such, which is a company that I order most of my seeds from, because if you're getting a lot, they discount the price for how many seeds you order. So I will often peruse the catalog from Baker Creek, but actually buy them on this site because they're a lot cheaper. I do spend a lot of money with Baker Creek though, so no hard feelings. But my point was going to be that if you look at the back of a seed pack like this one, it's very generic. So one thing you should do when you're planting seeds is just make sure that you got the timing correct. So this one will say start indoors in bright light 8 to 12 weeks before your last frost date. For us, that's now. We are between weeks 11 and 10, so we need to get these started. This packet is a little bit confusing because it says start tomato or potato seeds indoors in a warm, sunny area about 6 to 8 weeks before planting outdoors. And when I see that, I'm scanning this packet and I see, I'm not reading the whole thing, I'm just seeing 6 to 8 weeks. And I think, oh wow, 6 to 8 weeks, okay. But I have to read on because it says, but allow 2 weeks longer for eggplant, celery, or pepper seeds. So you have to be careful when you're reading the seed packs because some of them are super generic like this. And this one doesn't give me a description of what this pepper actually is. So yeah, I know that they're snack pepper. So we're going to get all the peppers started. I don't have any super hot varieties, and if I did, I would have made really sure to start them earlier, even than this. Again, we're in Minnesota 4B, and our last frost date is about 2nd to 3rd week in May, give or take. Minnesota weather is very volatile, so we just watch the weather when that time comes to make sure that we've got no frost in the forecast and that we're feeling very safe. So the first thing I'm going to grab is my bin for our seed starting mix, and then our seed trays. So this tray is a very rigid tray that I bought from Bootstrap Farmer, and I'll show you a comparison. So this is like your standard Jiffy tray. I've got some labels in here from when I sell my seeds. And this is a floppy. So you can imagine when you got some big plants in here and the water and they're all soaked up, these trays often crack and break. They're really great for, you don't have a lot of them. They're cheap. And then they're good for when I put my seeds out to sell them. I'm not usually tending them. And so if somebody grabs one of these to take away their pile of plants, I'm not going to be too sad. This year is the first year that I've invested in these Bootstrap Farmer seed trays, and the only reason I know about these is because I watch YouTube videos and people on YouTube use them and really like them, and they are super rigid. I think I'm going to really love them. I already do, actually. And but they're pricey for the number of them that I need, so I'll have to stock up on them over time. And then I typically use these 6L seed starting trays. I used to save them and wash them, and I got really tired of that, and it's really a chore. And so this year I threw out all my old ones because you really can't reuse them. They, you know, get yucky stuff in them, like I don't know, pathogens and bug eggs and stuff like that. So you either have to wash them or you have to get new ones. This year I just got some new ones. So there are a few ways to prepare potting mix, or not, I shouldn't say potting mix, I should say seed starting mix. For those who are new at gardening, I would just recommend picking up a seed starting mix from the store. I've tried a few things, and I'd really love to try making my own seed starting mix because it's not very hard. It saves a lot of money, but I just haven't got there yet. I'm still, you know, last year I tried cutting corners and just planting. I won't even say how I planted because I'm sort of embarrassed for doing it. Okay, just kidding. I just tried to plant in cocoa coir because some of the videos that I watched said, oh, the seedlings don't need any nutrients because they have it all in the seed, and so don't buy anything with, you know, anything else in it. So I thought, well, fine, I'll just go and find the cheapest junk that I can put a seed in, and I planted them in cocoa coir, and it was awful because it didn't retain water. I shouldn't say that. It was either soaking wet or bone dry, and it just was way too hard to keep the moisture consistent. So after that failure, I just thought, you know what, I need to just go with something like this for a while. And this is probably, it's either cocoa coir or sphagnum moss. And let's see what's in here. Sphagnum, peat moss, perlite, and fertilizer is in this, and that's just fine for me. And I'm not an organic grower, so if you want to grow organic, or if you've got something against Monsanto, which we all do, but go with something else if you're an organic grower. But this is what I'm going for because gardening in Minnesota is not easy, and I want to give myself as much of an advantage as I can. So I use this. Some folks will also say you need to treat your soil for things like fungus gnat eggs. So many will say, you know, boil some water, pour it over the soil to kill any fungus gnat eggs that will be in here. I've tried that, and it's, in my opinion, it's kind of hard. because you boil the water, and I'm in the basement here, so if I want to boil water, I gotta do it upstairs and carry it down, or carry this up to my kitchen. And then you have to put exactly the right amount, because your soil, when you're ready to plant, can't be too dry or too wet. So you have to guess the exact right amount of boiling water. And in my opinion, the exact amount of water is pretty dry. And so if you're just putting boiling water to the point that it's barely wet, I just have a feeling that's really not doing much for the soil or to kill anything. So I don't do that. But I will show you what I actually do. I'm going to pour a little bit more in here because I'm going to need quite a bit, I think, for my seedlings. I do two things. First, our water heater is always turned up pretty high, and so I do use the hottest water I can get. Let that run a minute. It's pretty noisy. Like I said, I use the hottest water I can get, but I also use this. This is, or these are mosquito bits, and they are multi-purpose. So you can use these to treat your yard for mosquitoes, but also these little bits have something in them, and I think they're kind of a natural compound. It's not really a chemical, but it prevents fungus gnat eggs from hatching. And so I mix a little bit of this into my growing medium. So far, I haven't had a big problem with fungus gnats. That's another reason why I just feel like the boiling water method is, you know, not for me, is because I have plants in my house, and I will always have, well, maybe not always, but it's going to be really hard to completely eradicate fungus gnats and their eggs, because once there's one of them in your house, even if I get rid of any eggs that might be in here now, another one can come and just lay some eggs in here again. And so I can spend all day boiling water and doing this. Oh, and the other reason why I don't do the boiling water thing is because if I'm getting it wet enough for the boiling water to kill any eggs in here, then I'm going to need to wait a day or two for it to dry and drain a little bit before I plant any seeds in it. And I ain't got that kind of time because I'm a busy girl. And so this just works better for me. So, I'm sure you can't see this super well, but I'm going to hold it up for you. It is... You can see that it's moist. Let's see if there's any dry. Okay, so here's a little piece that's a little bit dry. You can, sorry, the light isn't great. It's a little bit lighter in color. When it gets darker, it's wet. You want to make sure there aren't any of these more dry clumps in there. Okay, fine. I'll bring you down here and see if that helps. So you can see how some of it is a little bit lighter than the rest. Those are dry. So make sure those are nice and moist. And then once you know that it's moist enough, you like that word, moist? Some people don't. I don't really either. That's about perfect. You don't want to be able to squeeze water. I'm squeezing this really hard, and I'm finally getting a couple drips off of it. Sorry, I had that off the camera. So I'm squeezing this pretty hard, and there, now you've got a couple drips off of it. That's about what you want. You don't want it any more wet than that, because you still want it to be pretty airy and fluffy and not muddy, because you don't want it to be super compact. So then I'm just going to take some of these mosquito bits and sprinkle them right in here. Another thing you can do for things like fungus gnats is you can do a hydrogen peroxide solution that you spray on the plants and the soil once they're already established, if you do have a problem with the fungus gnats. So I kind of prefer that method too. And really, they're more of an annoyance than anything, unless you really have a bad outbreak of them. They can start to damage the roots of your plants, so you definitely don't want that. But if you keep them mostly under control, they'll be just fine, and you may not even notice them for the most part. And for me, being in the laundry room, they stay. If there's one or two, they stay down here, and I can take care of them pretty quickly. Okay, so these little seed packs hold 6 cells. And what you do, and what you should do, is loosely pack. If you get any of these sticks, you just get rid of them. They just kind of take up space. Fill up your seed pack. Make sure you pack it down the first time, because, and I not only learned this from people who have, you know, I've not only read this, but I've also learned it for myself, is that if you don't pack it down a little bit, then you can get actually sizable air pockets in there. And I've actually lost a few batches of seeds, and to try to figure out why I lost them, I've taken them out and found that those huge air pockets were actually, they were, you know, the roots didn't have a place to go, and they were rotting the roots out. So you want to make sure that it's solid enough that there aren't really any big air pockets in there, but not so solid that the roots can't breathe. So you can see that's filled up all the way to the top, and I like to do it all the way to the top because I'm going to probably be up potting these anyway, so we might as well give them lots of room to grow. And then I'm just going to put them over here into the seed tray. Let me fill up the rest of these, and I'll be right back. Another thing I would say is, and I don't know if this applies as much to peppers as other plants, maybe not, but when you're planting things together, if you've got big varieties that you're planting and small varieties that you're planting, try to plant the big and small together, because these little dwarf snacking bell peppers may get shaded out by a larger plant like this one, and not get the light that it needs. So I just kind of try to plant like-sized things close together. I also like these removable seed trays because if some germinate faster than others, I can shuffle these around and move them. You know, if I've got a plant this high and the rest of them are this high, I can just pull this out and move it to another seed tray that has some bigger plants in it. And then the smaller ones I can keep in here and keep the light much closer to it. And so I really recommend sticking with these unless you know that you don't need a lot of space, and that if you don't want to pot these up. So let's start with this Hybrid Pepper Alliance. And here's what I do. I always have a Sharpie of some sort handy, because not only do we need to label our seedlings, we also need to have a little hole in the soil. And I like to use these because they kind of give you a good gauge of how deep to plant. So pepper seeds, let's see if it says on one of these packets how deep to plant them. 1/4 inch for this one. They're pretty much the same for most seed varieties, and I think that looks pretty close to 1/4 inch or maybe a half, so maybe I'll plant it up to about half that height. And so if you use something like this, it's better. Otherwise, you know, drop the seed on, poke it in, bury it, whatever. They're still going to grow either way. So I'm just going to go through my seed tray, and I'm going to put a little divot in each of these holes. So you might wonder why I've got this seed tray in the bottom and if there's anything special about it, and there is. So this seed tray is solid. You can get similar seed trays that have holes in the bottom. I do not use those because once I get these seeds planted, I will be bottom watering them. These seed cells are open on the bottom. They have drainage holes, which also means that once I have them planted in the seed tray, I don't want to water from the top here. In fact, most of the time I'd prefer to have the top slightly dry. I'm going to water down into the seed tray, and this is going to be down in there, and then the water is actually going to soak right up in through these holes and feed my plant that way. I'll show you what that looks like at some point. Okay, so I like to label first, and this is very important because it's no fun during the season if you don't know what plant you've got growing. And today is February 17th. So I just put the variety on there, on the front, and the date on the back. The date is useful for a couple of reasons, especially if you do some succession planting like I do, where I'll start this batch and then later on I'll maybe do another batch of them because I've got extra plants, or maybe my first batch doesn't do very well, so it's nice to have the date for that reason. But also, I forget the other reason. I will tell you when I think of it. So this is a seed pack. This was, I think, $1.99, $1.79 or something, which is a really good deal because I got them from Seeds and Such and they give you a discount. And it had this many seeds in it, which isn't a lot. And so this is a valuable little plant. I'm going to plant one seed in each of these holes. Okay, so that's 6 plants. I've got this many left. I'm going to save them for another day. And now that they're in there, I'm just going to push a little bit of soil over the top, make sure that I gently tap it to make sure there's good soil contact, because that soil is going to bring moisture into the seed, which is going to trigger it to germinate. Okay. Let's see, that was sort of a big one, so the next one maybe I'll do this big red. There's about the same number of seeds in this pack. I kind of like these shorter tags. I don't usually because I end up potting these and I like to stick them down in there. I got these with something. What did I get them with? They came free with something that I bought, but I kind of like them because in the case of these peppers, I might choose to put a humidity dome over the top of it. And if I use the bigger markers like these, they can interfere with that humidity dome. So these littler markers are actually kind of nice for some purposes. So I'm going to go ahead and plant the rest of these. I won't make you sit through it, and then I'll be right back. I remember the other reason why it is good to put the dates on. And I've been in the case before where I haven't had germination. And, you know, if it feels like it's taking a long time, I can go ahead and look at that date and determine, okay, do I give up on these seeds or do I wait a little longer? So if I expect a seedling to come up in 10 to 14 days and I get impatient and I see it's only been 9 days because I looked at the tag, I'm not going to throw those out. I'm going to wait a little longer. But if I see that it's been 4 or 5 weeks, I might consider just pulling those out and starting something new in its place. So that's another good reason to make sure that you're putting labels or dates on your labels. Speaking of plant labels, you do not need to buy these labels. In fact, there are many things you can use or even make. A lot of people will just use a popsicle stick. Some people will take leftover plastic containers like from your yogurt or from a milk jug and cut them up and use them as markers. The only thing I'll say is make sure that the material you're using is waterproof. You don't want to use any kind of cardboard or paper, of course, but also even I've had some bad luck with popsicle sticks because the water will kind of soak up into the popsicle stick and start making your ink run so that you can't read it anymore, especially if you plan to continue using them once you plant them outdoors. It's fairly impossible to keep anything labeled outdoors where it's not going to fade as far as, you know, these kind of sticks go. Last year what I did was for outdoors, I just took rocks, actually, rocks that I collected from my yard, and I used paint markers to draw on the rocks, and that worked really well, except that there were a couple of colors, so it came in like 10 or 12 paint colors. A couple of those colors didn't do very well, so I really, really strongly implore you to make sure that you're keeping up on your labeling, because you will regret it if you've got plants then you don't remember what they were, because then you don't know how to take care of them or what to do if there's a problem, or you know, if you really, really like something or really, really don't like something and you don't know what variety it is, it gets kind of disappointing in the end. See, I almost forgot to label that one. I really like to buy my plant labels just because you can get, you know, a huge pack of them relatively cheap, and I do use a lot of them because once all this is over, I will pot all of my plants in 2 separate cups, and either because they need more room to grow, or because well, both, because they need more room to grow and because I'm going to sell many of my extras, and so they all have to be labeled. And don't think you can get a tray and label the whole tray as something, because that doesn't work, because like you said before, you're going to be probably shuffling these around to be with like-sized plants, so label each individual container or individual cell if you're doing one at a time. But anyways, I don't like to make my own labels because I use hundreds of them really every year, and it would take me a very long time to cut up milk jugs to do so, and they just really aren't that expensive to buy. I ordered them on Amazon, although you can get them at many, many places. I mentioned earlier that the seed packets will have instructions on how deeply to plant these, but I'll also tell you, don't worry too much about it. As a general rule, if you don't have a seed packet to tell you, you can assume that a seed should be planted at about 2 times their size. So if you have a seed, you know, that's 1 millimeter, you would plant them 2 millimeters deep. These pepper seeds that I'm planting right now, some of them are almost to the surface and I'm just barely covering them, and other of them I made the hole a little deep in there, kind of deep down in there. It doesn't matter a lot. They're gonna grow. I've seen YouTube videos where people have tried it and they've poked the seed all the way down to the bottom and they still made their way to the top. So don't sweat it if you don't get it exactly the depth that it says on the seed packet. This packet of red Peter came with 7 seeds. So I better not screw these up. In fact, I think I'm going to only plant 5 and save 2 as an emergency backup, because I really just want 1 or 2 of these plants. Really, I just want 1. 2, because what if one doesn't go, one doesn't do well. So I've got this seed tray all filled up. This is 72 pepper plants. They will not all germinate, and some varieties will germinate better than others. It would not be my first time if I've had everything germinate but one particular variety. It just happens, and so another tip is grow a couple of varieties, or at least if you're just starting out, grow and you don't want to grow a couple varieties, grow something that's really tried and true and been around for a while and not so specialty. So it's really these specialty types that I would expect to maybe not grow so well. Some people will, at this point, bottom water their plants, or they will soak them down from the top. What I'm going to do is, since I've already moistened my soil and it is at just about the moisture level that I want, I'm not going to water this again right now, but I am just going to spray down the top just lightly. I do have a pump sprayer that makes this easier, but I'm just going to spray the top a little bit lightly just to make sure that it's really got good moisture on the top. The seedlings are really going to be nice and moist, so that to ensure that they will germinate. This little mister that I bought is almost too fine of a mister. The water is kind of floating off of here. So give me a second and I'll just make sure these are good and wet on the top. And then I'm going to do something a little bit different, because I've been really successful growing peppers. But I've changed the way I do it over time, and I'm going to kind of revert back to a different methodology. So when I started actually learning and paying attention to how to grow well, I learned that some seedlings require heat to germinate. Some do not. Peppers are one of those seedlings that like to be warm when they germinate. But here's what happened when I was a newer gardener. I had a little standalone greenhouse, and I put the light over it like I was told in, you know, videos and other sources. And I put a heat mat on and I let these guys go. Oh, and I used one of these. This is a humidity dome. It keeps the moisture in. It is really helpful, but let me explain why you have to be careful with these. They do a really good job of keeping the moisture in, so you don't have to worry so much about watering. Watering is important for your seedlings, because if you have too much water on them, they will die. If they dry out, they will die. And seedlings only have tiny, tiny little root structures, so it only takes drying out at the first just centimeter of the top for a newly growing seedling to die. Like my orange hat that we talked about in my last video. That's why I lost a few of those. I was away for just a couple days, and then I came back and they looked like they were fine, but they really weren't. So my mistake. But watering is very, very important, and they have to be kept moist and not wet. And so that's what these humidity domes do. They keep the moisture at exactly the level, pretty much exactly the level that you set it at to begin with. Here's another thing that they do though. They keep it very warm inside there. And so I'm going to be putting these under my very strong grow light, so it's going to be hot in here anyway. And then if I put them also on a heat mat, and I'll show you that in a second, they're going to get pretty hot inside here. My heat mats don't have thermostats on them. I think that may be one of my next investments. But here's what happens. They cook. I have lost so many seedlings in the beginning because I used a heat mat and the Humidity Dome, which acts as a greenhouse, and the lights all together. So they cooked, and so I stopped using a heat mat altogether. So I had decided this time I was going to go back to using the heat mat because the science is solid, right? The science says, you know, these need to be at about 80 degrees to germinate. And most of my stuff in the soil here is not 80 degrees. And so I thought, well, the science is correct. They need to be warm. I just have to be diligent enough to take this humidity dome off once they start to germinate. And as I say this out loud, I get really nervous because I had decided I'm going to put this on the heat mat, but really I'm just kind of scared because the combination of the heat mat and the humidity dome and the lights may not be so good for these. And I don't think I have a spot to put them where there are no lights. So I think here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try it again. I'm going to use the heat mat, and I'm just going to have to set a reminder for myself to check these once in a while and come down here and check the temperature on these. So let's go over there and I'll show you exactly what I will do with these. This is a heat mat. It is made specifically for seed starting, so you wouldn't want to use like a medical heating pad or anything like that. And so it is gentle. It is relatively gentle on the seedling. It's not going to per se burn them, but this particular one does not have, or any of mine, they do not have a thermostat where they will shut off if it gets too warm, so I'll have to be really diligent about watching their temperature. If you're just starting out, these are good to have, and this particular one I think I got off of Facebook Marketplace. Somebody had been using it and didn't need it anymore, and I got it at a really reasonable price. Otherwise, you can get them at places like Fleet Farm, maybe Menards has them, places like that. So I'll show you what to do. Hold on. Okay, there we go. So I just took our seed starting tray, put it right on top of this heat mat, and this is going to warm the seed cells from the bottom up, and then from the top down we're going to get some warmth from these heat lights. Now, or not heat lights, but you know, grow lights. I could shut the grow lights off and they will still germinate, but here's the thing, is once a seedling starts to sprout, you have to have them under the grow lights immediately or they will get leggy, like these. These I had accidentally shut off, or I had forgotten that I shut off these back lights, and so they were reaching and stretching, and I don't know how well they're going to do, but they should look, you know, a little more squatty like these basil plants. So they need to be under the lights as soon as they sprout, so I just keep them on to be safe. And I will actually drop them down to be even closer to here to make sure that they have super bright light. I've got enough of them and they're really bright that I haven't had any problems so far with just leggy seedlings. So what I'll need to do is just be really diligent about making sure that I remove this top once the seed starts to sprout. Now, I think I have over here, perfect, this. Oh, it's bigger than I remember, but let's see if we can make it work. This is a receiver for a thermometer that I actually have upstairs that I use in my greenhouse in the spring, and I've just moved down here. So this will measure temperature, and it actually shows on a little device that I have on my desk upstairs. So I think that if I stick this in here, kind of on an edge where it's not going to bother any seedlings, even though I don't have a thermostat, I can watch the temperature in here. So if it starts cooking at 100 degrees and I'm sitting in my office chair, doing some work and I see that my seedlings are cooking, I think I can come down and rescue them. Just as a reminder, these are my little orange hat tomatoes that I killed because my moisture was not perfect. See this little guy? Yeah, crispy, right? These are not doing well either, and I don't know if these two cells sprouted at all, they're dead. If they haven't sprouted yet, or germinated yet, maybe they'll still come back. So, a reminder of the importance of keeping just that perfect moisture level in your soil when you have seedlings. Stuff like these guys, where they're not drying out as fast because they're in big pots and they're kind of shaded by their own foliage. They're not quite as sensitive, and their root systems are nice and deep in here. So once they get to a point like this, they're much more hardy. But these little tiny guys, you gotta really baby along. Alright guys, so that's my first official planting of the 2021 gardening season. I hope that was helpful. I hope you don't take too many things too seriously, and listen to other sources when you get advice on gardening and doing things the right way and avoiding pests and that sort of thing. So don't take my word for any of this. This is just kind of how I'm doing it this year and how I've done it in the past, and it's tended to work for me. So hopefully that helps you, and we will see you next time.